Oh, look, I think for me it comes down to passion. There's no way you're going to be doing something great or anything great if you don't actually feel it, if you don't love delivering an experience for someone or making someone's day exceptional.
Welcome back to Dirty Linen, everybody. It is your host, Dani Valent, with you for another hospitality chat. While I've got you, let me remind you about our Deep in the Weeds newsletter, which comes out fortnightly. If you're not already signed up, we would love to send you a juicy little missive every fortnight. You can sign up at the deepintheweeds.com.au website or at any of the link trees with the podcasts that are on the show. Today we are talking about the hospitality experience. We spend a lot of time talking food, getting hot and sweaty in the kitchens of restaurants, but nothing happens without front of house. I've got to say, I had an amazing experience last night at Supernormal. The food was great, but the experience was really made by the front of house team. Somebody else who is all about creating amazing experiences for his guests is Gianluca Esposto. He runs the floor at Amare at Crown in Sydney. Gianluca, welcome to Dirty Linen.
Hi, Dani. Thanks for having me.
Tell me a little bit about what drives you. What do you love about your job?
Well, I can easily summarize it to, I guess, making people happy and making people's dining experience. I think too often, as you just said, the focus is on food, as it should be, obviously. But I think the industry has, recently shifted, and food and beverage is not the only component that gets into a dining experience. But now more than ever, I think the service and the front of house side of the business is extremely important in making someone's night or someone's special occasion. So I believe it's a good 50-50 share in someone's dining experience. Yeah.
So what are some of the things that you do that you think really tie the experience together for your guests? Here at Amare, we are, as you know, heavily focused on tableside service. And obviously, it's a type of service that you don't get to see in Australia that often. It's very common in Europe, Italy, France, Spain, a little bit of in the States as well, but it's not that common here in Australia. And I think that adds engagement and connection with your guests, especially when you are prepping, and delivering and executing food for them at the table. It allows you to get to know them on a personal level and create the kind of trust and relationship that I feel you need to obviously understand and anticipate their needs and therefore making their dining experience exceptional. One of my favourite videos from the Amare Instagram is of a room full of waiters with mortar and pestles. Tell me about that. What are they doing?
Well, look, it's I can say that on Saturday night, on a very busy evenings here at Amare, it's like being on a motorways. There's trolleys that come, trolleys that go. There's a lot happening on the floor for us, and that's the kind of excitement and engagement that we're obviously trying to bring to the table for our guests. There are a lot of moving components that come into play in our type of service. So obviously getting the timing right with your trolleys or understanding when it's the right time to start making that, the pesto in front of your guests. As I said, that's a point of it adds to our dining experience, and we actually have guests that are specifically coming back, to try obviously the amazing food, but also to be specifically looked after by one of our staff, one of our team member. And I feel like, that's our end goal at the end of the day.
Can you go into more detail about the pesto? Like, tell me how you train people. Tell me why it matters that this pesto is made at the table.
Of course. So obviously, Chef Alessandro is very particular and very focus on delivering quality food for all our guests. So for any new staff that comes on board here at Amare, there's a pretty intense and extensive training program that goes into the development, starting obviously with the pesto making process. We do have a training manager that has been appointed a few months ago that is actually the person that looks after the whole training program for the new staff, but also for the current staff. just as a refresher every now and then to make sure the standards are up to date. So we take all these new employees through the whole process from top to bottom. So what that means for them to be doing the right move and crushing the nuts and the leaves in the right way with delivering and trying to get the right consistency and flavor out of any pesto that we make at the table. There's a good amount of hours that goes into training, and for us, training is one of the most important part of our business. And as we normally say to anyone that jumps on board, we can teach you literally anything, any sort of skill that you might not have, from obviously the pesto making process to the filleting of fish to the deshelling of the lobster and plating up of the pasta at the table. So training for us, it's a key component of our business, and we heavily focus on that.
I mean, it's interesting you say, you can teach any skill. Are there some things that you can't teach? Are there some ineffable qualities that make a great front of house professional that you find it's really hard to instill in somebody if they don't come with them already?
Oh, look, I think for me, it comes down to passion, to be honest, passion and love for your job. I mean, as I said, I can teach you anything about pesto, fish or meat or carving the meat or making it or just cooking a tiramisu or anything that we might do tableside, as long as you have the right attitude, the right mentality, and more than anything, love for what you do. I think there's no way you're going to be doing something great or anything great if you don't actually feel it, if you don't love delivering, an experience for someone or making someone's day exceptional. That's what it comes down to for me, and then for the team, obviously. So that's the kind of mentality that we're trying to instill into the new employees, but also in the current staff as well.
I think, one of the things for me that really makes great service is that you feel seen, that somebody's really watching you as an individual and anticipating what you might like or want or not have. I mean, what about that side of things, Gianluca? What are some of the things that you're looking for, those silent signals that you might get from a guest?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we do have a pretty core business of regulars that come down, I don't know, a couple of times, 3 times a week. So for us, getting to understand and remember, obviously, their preferences and the flavors and the likes, it's extremely important. We do have guests there, are into martinis or into Negronis or into specific stuff that we do specifically for them, and anticipate their needs, as you said, and making sure that we do deliver that product even before they start asking or thinking about, I feel like my usual martini or my usual Negroni. For us is what, especially obviously for the team of front of a house, means delivering and anticipating their needs. And that creates also, I feel like, a personal relationship with your guests. That's where you start to know them on a personal level and they start to know you on a personal level. And that's extremely important in what we do, especially obviously in our industry.
I mean, what are the things, let's say I come in and, I don't know, I've got a bit of a bad vibe. Maybe I had a really bad, someone got really mad at me as I was driving, or something bad happened. I tripped on the curb as I was coming into the restaurant. I've just arrived in a bit of a fluff. And what would you see in me? How would you know that? And then what would you do to try to make things better?
Oh, look, I think it's pretty normal to be having, bad days, being stuck in traffic or having, a fight with your partner or friends or family or whatever. What we're trying to, to make sure it happens in every single service that we get into is to, first of all, people will need to feel like we're treating as our friends, like they step into their home or their friend's home. So with our warmth, with our genuine hospitality, with our almost hug, without welcoming way of making sure we can turn someone's days around. I feel like this is what we are all about here at Amare. So we very well known for our friendliness and for our warmth and for our real type of service that we deliver and hospitality that we provide to our guests. And I feel that's the best way to make sure, you feel not like you're dining out, but it's just like having that luxury of being looked after by someone, but it's just like the feeling of being dining, as I said, at your friend's home. So this is what we're trying to achieve every day.
Amare is, it's a pretty fancy restaurant. It's an upscale environment, and you've got a large team. You're able to train people. I mean, what could people who are in perhaps smaller businesses, working at not such a high level, what could they take from your experience to give their own teams a little bit of extra spark and polish?
Look, I think for me it comes down to establish personal relationship with your staff. Yes, we're a massive operation. Yes, we run, Saturday services with up to 390 covers. But for us, none of our staff is considered as a number. Each one of them plays an extremely important role within, obviously, the business, with their strengths and their weaknesses, obviously. But we, get to know them on a personal level. And I feel like that's the best way to go. And the way moving forward, treat your staff as, not as a number, but a crucial part of your operation, because at the end of the day, they're the one facing guests. They're the one, out there, taking good and bad sometimes. That can happen. And the more you motivate them, the more you, provide them the right training and the right feeling about, making sure they feel valued and trained, as I said, the more you'll get out of them. That's what it comes down to for us.
So Gianluca, what if I'm in a business and I don't have time to formally train my staff? I mean, do you sometimes see things that you can just tweak in the moment, whether it's saying to a young staff member, doesn't have that much experience, that you might see them floundering in a way, or they don't know how to look after a table? What are some things that you can sort of tweak in the moment that really help someone get better at their job?
Look, I think it also comes down to training on the ground as well, not just on the theoretical side of it. Yes, there's a lot of hours that we put into training before services, obviously, but things can be taught even during service. I think the most important thing for us is that we just make sure that everyone feels that it's okay to make a mistake. We're human beings, we can make mistakes. Doesn't matter how professional and how experienced you are, as long as obviously someone is there to make you understand what happened in this specific occasion and show you what the right way of doing things is. And that's what we call, perhaps, I guess, training on the ground, I would imagine.
Yeah, that's so important. Can really transform that person's evening and then in turn the guests, for sure. Gianluca, you mentioned earlier that you think that the emphasis of hospitality has shifted a little bit, and people are starting to see the importance and professionalism of front of house. Are there things that you would like to see change in the industry more broadly that sort of reinforce this change in emphasis? Definitely. I think the whole conversation is something that has been top of my list for the last probably, few months. I'd just like to see the same focus that we've seen in the last few years on chefs and on sommeliers, perhaps as well, but we haven't seen in front of house roles at all. I think, as I said earlier to you, the front of house plays an extremely important role into delivering the right dining experience or making someone's night memorable. A good friend of mine, Michael, that is the restaurant manager up at Encore here in Crown. We've been talking about the last few months for this. How can we change this? How can we turn this around? How can we make sure that people in front of a house are seen or are appreciated or are valued in the same way chefs and sommeliers are in Australia? And I think a lot comes down to kind of creating a sort of community, or having a sense of community around front of a house, grouping, your leaders or leaders of all the restaurants, and start to talk about these small changes or what we can do to improve and make sure people see these also as a career path, not just a temporary job, which they use for, pay their bills, pay their uni, or pay whatever expenses they might have. This is the change that I'd like to see a little bit more. How can we do that? Because it's so much of it, to me, seems to be about that careers counsellors at schools will look at front of house as a viable profession, that parents will be proud that their kids want to go into that as a career. I mean, it feels like quite a large society-wide shift that we need to spark.
I think so, but I think we also have to start somewhere. Just by getting this conversation started, I think it could also be a benefit that each of our business will take out of this. Imagine having, a group of leaders of diverse restaurants around Sydney or Melbourne or any city in Australia, talking about, the issues they're facing within their operation, or how we can get or brainstorm or get ideas out of, we can, improve the whole industry as a general field. So I think there needs to be a little bit more collaboration within us. Sometimes there's a lot competition and not enough collaboration. That's the very first thing that I think we need to start working on. And as I said, create a sense of community around the front of the house. It's so important to get together and, if we want to really change things.
What about the skills side of things, Gianluca? Because there aren't that many restaurants who are doing the sort of elaborate tableside service that people are so lucky to witness at Amare. I mean, tell me about, do you think that being able to grace a table with those kinds of skills, really complete the experience in that way, do you think that makes front of house a more compelling career option for people? Absolutely. And that's the reason why Alessandro Pavoni has this vision about this restaurant, to make sure people are actually seeing a career out of the front of house roles. It's not just about, delivering food anymore and talking about the 2 or 3 main ingredients and components that are making that dish, but it's also making and, that the whole dish from top to bottom at the table, or, having little touches that allow you to engage and understand who you're dealing with. I think it's extremely important. We've been talking about, we had a couple of other ideas of a few months ago of wanting to create a sort of hospitality school where we actually teach people how to fillet the fish, how to make pesto, or how to fillet carve a steak at the table, or do anything that we do here at Amare. So this is also been a project of ours that we had to postpone in the last few months because there's a lot happening at this stage. We've been in with a couple of new projects here in Sydney, so it's a bit. It's a bit full on. So, but it's definitely something that we would love to work on in the future. Yeah. Well, I would also love to sneak into one of those classes and improve my fish filleting and steak carving skills. So yeah, let me know when it's happening. Gianluca, we often have this idea that in Europe, waiters are respected more, that it is seen as a viable long-term career. I mean, is that impression correct? Yes and no. I mean, there's a lot of the career in Europe I feel like it's very different, especially with the young generation now. No one is into the hospitality anymore. And as a result, in any place you go in, like say Italy or France or, Spain, you do get to see a lot of quite mature wait staff around, and you don't see the young guns coming through. And I feel that's why, a lot of our people from, say, my generation have left Europe. Because they wanted to find, a luck somewhere else, or they wanted to progress in their career somewhere else. And I feel that's why we have an opportunity here in Australia. Australia is so diverse in terms of culture, in terms of food offer as well, but also in terms of competition. And I feel like if we only be a little bit more focused on making sure people understand what being in hospitality means, what being part of someone's day means, I think that we will see a better result in the next few years. Where did this passion start for you, Gianluca? Where did you first start looking after people in restaurants?
Look, I started I think it was 16 or 17 years ago. 17 years old. I was just doing, as a second job, just working in bars at night in Milan, which is where I'm from, while I was still studying. And then at some point I decided that I didn't want to study anymore, and I wanted to be focused on in restaurants and hospitality, as a career path. And then I moved to Sydney when I was probably 22, 23. And that's where really my passion for hospitality exploded completely. I've worked in some of the restaurants here in Sydney, worked my way up to my position today. But the passion and love for what I do has never been, it's always kept growing on me. And it's like I call it almost a sort of an addiction to hospitality. So this is what I do. This is what I like to do. And this is what we're trying to obviously to pass on to the team and to the young generation that comes on into the business as well. As I said, you need to love and you need to have passion for what you do. Otherwise, there's no way you're going to be doing great at this. So yeah, it comes down to passion for me.
I mean, what do you think it is that you love so much about making people happy? Why does this fuel you?
Look, for me, the best part is to see, as you said earlier, someone that comes in with a sad face, or a bit angry, or a bit upset because they had a bad day, and making sure I turn that situation around, making sure they leave this building and my restaurant with a smile in their face. That's what makes my day. This is what This is what I do. This is what I like to see in people. But also, I'm not going to lie, obviously the excitement and the adrenaline that goes into services, busy services like Saturday night, making sure you have fun with your guests, but also with your staff and with your team. That's how you can create a great dining experience. And I also think that guests will perceive and will see when you're actually having fun while you're working, as opposed to, I'm here just because I need to pay my bills at the end of the week. This is the point of difference, I think, with our dining experience.
I mean, I have to say, I feel like as a diner, there is nothing like being in a busy restaurant and feeling like the captain of the ship has it all in hand. It is such a pleasure to feel like you're being carried along by the skill, the experience, the energy that's in the dining room. So, I'm really grateful to you and your colleagues for creating the experiences that you do. And I think the idea of creating more of a sense of community around front of house is really worthwhile. All the best with fostering that.
Thank you. It's a bit of a long shot. I'm well aware of that, but we're not actually giving up as a community, I think, until we get to the point where we can see front of a house recognized as for what it is, which is obviously part of, a very important part of any hospitality business.
Absolutely. Completely crucial. Well, thanks, Gianluca, for sharing with us today. It's been wonderful to have a chat.
Thank you very much for having me, Dani, and talk to you soon.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtyLinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This